Good evening, friends. You can hear me? I guess it's been a long day, so I'll keep the intro short. Let me start with a simple question. How many of you in this audience have either invested in mutual funds or equity? A show of hands will help. Is that your 50%?
I don't know. We were having a debate backstage saying how many people in this crowd would have invested, in the audience would have invested. I was saying 55 to 60%. I think it's kind of like that. Some people are lazy not to get the hand up.
Good. I can see it's a fairly good response on that. Now, friends, I think when we are talking about investing in the equity markets, in mutual funds, or in financial services, the entire ecosystem, whenever we talk about, if you remember, for last 2 or 3 decades, we have been talking about the VUCA world, right? It fell out of fashion after COVID. What was it? The volatility, ambiguity, complexity, and uncertainty. And now you can add AI to it, and you say, oh, it's an AI-powered VUCA world. I think that's an apt definition of where we are going. And it's a very confusing kind of a landscape. And whenever we talk about the financial services sector, we are talking about, earlier we were talking about machine learning. Then we moved the conversation to Gen AI 3 years back when AI got a face with ChatGPT. And then, of course, just as we were wrapping our heads around all that stuff, agentic AI came up on the horizon. I remember Ambarish and we were talking about it. A slight debate about whether it's old wine and new bottle, or because autonomous agents have been around for quite some time. But of course, it's been an evolution and kind of a massive refinement. But wrapping our heads around agentic AI, the reason we are talking about it is what does it mean to the financial services world? So for one, clearly, I was just looking at some statistics that over 70% of all global trades are executed by algorithms. Now, of course, what does it mean for a country like India? What does it mean for a very highly regulated kind of body? Here, I think, Ambarish, when I was having a chat, algorithms also have to be registered with the regulatory bodies, that SEBI out here. So those are important things, but we'll be talking about that. But if you look at an AI trading agent, what does it do? It looks at tickers automatically. It would look at your news. It would, execute trades automatically. That's the whole understanding. We are clearly not talking about the kind of human labor that is involved. The tons of people on the back of behind the screens that actually help in creating these kind of AI agents. But at this point in time, we are talking about the roles of how manual work has shifted to agentic kind of behavior. What does it mean? Because basically, if you look at the average human reaction, the average human reaction time is 200 to 250 milliseconds. A basic algo can execute trade in under 10 milliseconds.
Maybe even faster.
Maybe even faster. So institutional systems actually operate absolutely in microseconds. So what are we up against? Of course, the conversation that we're going to have will revolve around the opportunities, the threats that are there in this kind of a system, and of course, the way forward. Ambarish, without much ado, how are retail investors? Because a very large portion of your this segment is basically about retail investors. This landscape is very, very sort of tricky. How can they leverage AI in whatever form? Let's talk about the basic form. Let's not get into agentic at this point in time. But overall, how are they using AI?
So first of all, thanks so much for having me here. And I see a lot of you are awake at this time in the afternoon. Yeah, we'll open up in the end for some questions as well. So we'll go there. In terms of I just wanted to give you a quick, background on Angel One, because a lot of times people don't know what Angel One is. A lot of times people feel like, hey, it's about angel investing. So we are a 30-year-old company. We started as a broker, but now we are a fully fledged financial services company where we've got, of course, broking services, but we have a wealth management arm as well. We have asset management company, so we have our own mutual funds. We do lending and insurance distribution as well. So think of us as a fully fledged financial services company, and really more and more we are a technology company because everything is happening or at the tech stack, really. In terms of retail investors, I think, look, like Leslie mentioned, in India, you can create algorithms, you can do stuff, but you really, to get really advanced, you would have to register with the NSE or one of the exchanges. Today, in fact, at a broader level, the way retail investors can use it, number one is for education, to just understand different terms. While many of you are very savvy, but most retail investors are not very savvy, so they don't even understand different terms. You know, what does delivery mean? What does intraday mean? What is the MTF? What is RSI? What does different technical terms mean? So just understanding the industry. Number two is just understanding stocks, mutual fund, other things, saying, look, what is it that you really want to invest in based on what your appetite for risk is? What do you know about the industry? What kind of quote-unquote bets you want to take, right? What is your worldview of what is going to happen? In general, as human beings, we have a certain worldview, and we work on it based on that. So for example, in Angel One also, we've created something called Ask Angel. So it's a bot that gives you contextual information, and it is very well guardrailed so that it doesn't sort of hallucinate. It'll give you the correct information on whether you want a stock price or you want a technical term, or you want to understand what is happening in the market, what might happen tomorrow, without speculating too much, just staying on fundamentals and giving you the information. So overall, what retail investors can do is understand, learn investing, and then within the guardrails, be able to invest without taking too much risk, really, is what I think.
So when we move the conversation, say, from kind of a LLM-based chatbot, I mean, a Gen AI kind of chatbot, a rule-based chatbot, it has already moved long back. When you're talking about Ask Angel, it is already a kind of a different bot where it's not that kind of, it's a complex one. Now, when you increase the complexity, when you increase the evolution straight to an agentic kind of stuff, what are the changes that actually then, what does it mean? What are the implications out here?
So I want to, because Leslie mentioned we had a little bit of a conversation on agents. I want to be clear on what my belief is on what agents are. What is agentic AI? In my mind, an agent is an autonomous system. That's number one, right? It's an autonomous system. Second is it is able to understand its environment. One way or the other, it is able to get some sort of inputs from the environment. Number three is that it has some sort of skills and access to tools where it is able to access and say, look, I'm able to do a few things. And number four, it's got a goal that you program in and say, this is how you should operate and this is your goal. Your goal is to maximize this specific parameter. So that's an agent. Now, in the agentic AI world today, investment gets very interesting. Now, how many of you have heard about what Robinhood has announced recently? Robinhood was a US company, call it a US investment company. Anybody knows what Robinhood talked about recently? Okay, then that's news. I think a couple of days back, they said, look, we are creating a sandboxed environment where agents, you can connect your agent and they can start trading. Now, you have to, it's not your regular account, but you can actually have an agent that can start trading. So this is starting to happen and the world is starting to become complex. Binance, which is a crypto company, that also started doing that in March. So agents are starting to work. This morning, actually, I was looking at LinkedIn, and Gokul Rajaram, who's one of the prolific investors in the US, he created his own system, and he said, recently I opened it up to agents. Guess on what percentage of his queries are now, his system is being hit by agents by 53% is just agents. So of course, you've got agents, social networks, you've got agents investing. So you are starting to see a lot of that. In India especially, I think you will see much less of that. But over a period of time, what can happen is agents can still start doing things that are not executing trades. For example, you can create your own agent. In fact, that's a very small exercise, interesting exercise for all of us, you to try out, is create an agent that actually generates news for you the way you like it. And every morning, it could either send you an email or every now and then it could send you an alert. It starts scraping the web and keeps sending you alerts on what news you like. So it can start educating you. Of course, as what is happening around the world is agents are coming into investing and everything else. As they come into it, the world becomes much more complex because the speed of some of these investments keep going up. I think overall, where it evolves is that as more agents comes, my guess is it will become more of an efficient market than less efficient, because very quickly news sort of gets built into the price. And therefore, my hope is that it starts getting more and more efficient as agents come in. In between, you will see some complexity, you will see some imbalance. But as they come in, you will start having actually a more efficient market than anything else.
That's interesting that you say that because the speed of execution also will improve. But when you're talking about building these AI agents and you're inviting everybody, okay, at least try it out, I am sure you have your own APIs that they can connect to. So if you could just elaborate on that, because AI agents don't work in isolation. They have to connect to APIs, they have to connect to workflows. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It's not abracadabra that you have a magic pill and this.
Look, we have, now I want to be clear, we have smart APIs where you can actually call and execute trades, get information and stuff like that. But you can't really use agents for it because we will limit your velocity, and some of it is required by the regulator. You know, there are baby steps where you get there. Right now, the challenge is that you just don't know what agents might do. So as you develop agents, you have to be very careful about the guardrails. While you might think, you know, AI has evolved, Claude is saying, hey, you know, no problem, you can do it. But I don't know if you've heard of this news in China. I think one of the persons was using it for shopping, and suddenly it ran out all the credit card bill. Recently, now this is not agentic AI, but recently there's a company that reported, I think they have not reported the name, but they ran up a bill of $500 million in tokens in a month.
Scary.
For any company in the world, $500 million is a lot of money. So as you're using agents, as you're using these things, a few things to keep in mind. Number one, don't get on the bad side of compliance or regulations, because that will land you in bigger trouble than anything that will help you. Number two, I think keep an eye on the cost. The other day, I was playing around with Claude Desktop, and I won't tell you exactly what I was trying to do, but I connected with a few tools, and then I just doing a few queries. It was not an agent. But I ran up 1 million tokens in half an hour. And this was me typing stuff. Imagine if it was an agent running around. So think about the cost. And number three is always think about what could go wrong. It's not very clear and deterministic right now. In fact, you can try this out on a simple chatbot. You try to give the same query again and again, and it starts generating different answers. And it is actually purposefully doing that because it's a token generator, and it generates some tokens, but in between it starts picking a little bit randomly to keep it interesting. So think of these things as you do smart APIs or any kind of agentic AI.
Has anybody in the audience actually tried building an AI agent for trading? Yeah, you do have some people who have.
I didn't see that.
No, there were a few hands, a couple of hands. So the question now is a little around, the security, the accountability, the frauds that can take place, because this is a highly regulated sector, but at the same time you're dealing with a lot of, it's your money that is at stake. So I think that sort of compounds the kind of, you'll be terribly unsettled if you lose your money in the markets. I mean, it's not going to be fun. We have all heard about those digital arrests and all that. Those are like very, offline kind of stuff that you can say at this point in time. But if you talk about AI agentic behavior, if an AI agent makes an investment decision, executes a trade on your behalf, misidentifies a client using voice cloning, and causes a loss, then who's accountable?
First of all, I want to be absolutely clear. I am asking you not to write an AI agent for trading, especially in India. I think it's really, something that you'd have to worry about in multiple fronts, right? So that's one. Now, let's talk about the future or in the world, like you could be, for the international audience, anything else that you're doing. Or for a minute, let's go away from trading. Because any agent, let's say agent executes something, who's responsible? In the end, if you created the agent, you are responsible for what you did. Because it's like, let's say you were driving a car and hit something. Yes, you will have some deniability saying, look, the brake failed or something else. But in the end, like you're driving a car, it's your responsibility to make sure it's safe. So when you are an agent, don't assume that because of the actions you took, somebody else will take liability. In the end, you knew what you were doing. And so if you're using an agent, you have that responsibility of making sure that it acts responsibly. You have tested it. And both, right? It could cause harm to somebody else, but it could cause harm to you as well. And there is there is lots of upside to it, but I think the guardrails are really, really important. Many times you'd think, hey, this could never happen to me. But over and over again, I'm seeing that these things happen. I'll give you a very random example, not related to trading. But the other day, I think Punjab Kings were playing RCB at Dharamshala. And I believe Punjab Kings was probably playing first. And I said, look, what is the maximum score in Dharamshala? I won't say which chatbot. It said 135. I said, hey, I don't believe that. So what is the maximum score somebody playing first has done? 186. I said, what is the maximum score somebody has chased at Dharamshala? 265. So you will see that hallucinations still happening. So one has to be very careful with anything you're using with agentic.
Yeah, I mean, we have been talking about hallucinations, but that's also a feature of the way LLMs are built because they are stochastic parrots at the end of the day. So if they are next word prediction engines, at some point in time, they are going to hallucinate. But yes, we can reduce the kind of hallucinations that, I mean, the models are improving that part of
the
it.
models are improving. Also, I think there are techniques around that, right?
Yes,
For example,
RAG and all.
RAG and stuff like that. So you can actually dampen the hallucination to quite an extent. So like, for example, if you use Ask Angel on Angel 1, you're not going to see a hallucination. In fact, the reverse can happen sometime where we might say, hey, you know what, I can't answer this. And sometime it could answer it, but it says it can because it want to keep that guardrail. And doing that guardrail is super helpful. In fact, if you were a startup and doing things, just creating a framework so that something could be in a guardrail is a very interesting problem to have and say, hey, if you're doing agentic AI, I'll give you something that brings guardrail on top of it. That could be a tremendous opportunity.
So these kind of evolutions that have taken place will obviously get a little, will come back to the kind of limitations of these models. But before that, you have also worked with Google Pay, you have worked with Myntra, so your experience ranges across sectors. Let's talk about the India stack a bit. Okay, you have the India stack, the whole DPI framework that we talk about it. How does these ideas, how do they tie it up with the larger framework as far as India's innovation stack, DPI stack is concerned?
Yeah, no, look, I think DPI stack, really digital public infrastructure is essentially a stack that you create for public good. On top of it, a lot of other players can work and it becomes a thing for public good. UPI is probably the perfect example. Account aggregator is a great example. ONDC is a great example. I actually think right now there is a lot of talk of it, but I think at the DPI layer, AI yet, there isn't, at least I don't know of a very, for health, there was this sort of, another sort of health stack that was there. But for AI, if one of you were to dream up a stack and say, look, this kind of a stack is there, on top of it, everybody else could work, that could be quite good. One of the things that I've been thinking, and Leslie, we had some chat with another AI expert in the background as we were sitting there, is that one of the big things is that could India become so back in the day, so if you look at it, right, so India is a large market, but India is not a highly monetizable market. If you see, right, for example, just any goods that you have, in the end, you end up selling in US because it's very, very, very monetizable. So one of the things I was thinking about is that inference is hard because it sometimes ends up being closer to the markets. But India was like, for example, the back office hub, it was the call center hub, it's been a development hub for a long time. Could it become the training hub for AI? Like maybe we build like amazing data centers and maybe there is some layer that comes in where, and maybe that becomes a connection to the DPI, but I don't know how, I mean, one of you will dream it up or it'll come, but there isn't a very specific sort of AI for Bharat kind of thing. There is of course Bharat Gen, which is an India model that is being developed out of IIT Bombay. There is another thing called Bhashini, which is all the languages in India coming together and having those samples. So if anybody wants to do work in language, there is. But there isn't a very structured layer yet from what I see.
And also, I think in this context, coming back to the limitations, whenever we talk about financial services as such, or we talk about wealth creation, or we talk about money, and especially if it's our money, then that operative word here is trust. Now, AI sometimes turns out to be the antithesis of trust because there's a lot of mistrust around these models. How do you match both the opportunity part of it, the potential, and the kind of limitation?
See, look, opportunity is there, and I think that opportunity will come and is continuing to come. So we are using it across the stack, right? So we are, we talked about Ask Angel. We are also generating an internal tool called Data Gen, where we put all the data in a lake, and then we have an internal tool where you can question it instead of looking at dashboards. It can start generating insights. We're using it for customer support as well. We're starting to think about like how do we use for voice customer support as well. We've got a bunch of areas, even for learning, we are using it for operations. So the opportunity is tremendous. The challenge is that you have AI in your hand, the hackers also have AI in their hands. And that's the challenge now, is that cycle will get amplified. And it's not just about financial services. Any industry, anywhere you are, you have to worry about security. In fact, if you are a startup, security is the other sort of evergreen area where there is a tremendous scope for security. And you saw that with Mythos. When Anthropic released Mythos, suddenly everybody took notice. In fact, that was a great, people are saying it's a great marketing stunt as well, is that some people got access to Mythos, and everybody's now worried that it could attack your network, your systems. But I think we have to get ahead of it. Now, all of us don't have access to Mythos, but you could use Opus 4.7 or Opus 4.8 to figure out what kind of change security vulnerabilities exist, to figure out a process around it. And don't just think that just because you're not a financial services company, it's not a big deal. Any kind of company, your brand is the biggest thing you have. And if you have many of you will have a lot of personal data that is available. So anytime it attacks your personal data, it attacks your brand, it's actually a big challenge for you. So think about security in advance, get ahead of the hacker. So that opportunity is there, but with that opportunity, a very large responsibility has come up in terms of making sure that we keep it secure.
So what are the steps that you're taking to strengthen the guardrails within your own company as such?
So one of the things we are doing, of course, so there are some things that are just fundamentals, and then there are things that we can use AI for. So some of the fundamentals you continuously keep strengthening. You create parameters, you create zones so that people can do certain things within certain parameters. You create access management. All that good stuff you keep checking and you create, and then AI can help you audit it, can make it better. But now with AI tools being available, we are actually able to use Opus 4.7 and say, look, can we look at vulnerabilities inside our own company? So back in the day, you've probably heard this term red teaming, where a set of human beings will try different things and attack your own network and say, hey, is there a problem? But now we are able to use AI and continuously attack ourselves and say, look, does our code have a problem? Does our network currently have a problem? And the good thing with AI now is that because context windows are increasing, now 1 million token context window is nothing these days. Everybody's starting to have that. What it can do is what no human being can do, because it can look at chain vulnerabilities that otherwise now with AI people will start to explore and exploit. So you need to make sure if you have a business that is of significant size or it has data or anything else, you need to make sure that it starts doing what we are doing with these AI agents, and look at your code as well as network configurations and production systems. Be careful as you use it so that it doesn't sort of end up attacking it in a real-time way where it sort of totally becomes like an attacker, but attacks in a benevolent way and really red teaming ends up happening.
I would now like to broaden the discussion a bit, okay? I mean, here, as a company, Angel One has something, 3,500 employees, you said.
Sure.
Now, in an agentic era, you have these many employees at a time when everybody is, sort of laying off thing, and it's become a very sensitive kind of topic. I would love to hear your thoughts on how this marriage is happening of the human-AI collaboration, and what would be the kind of impact that you perceive on the workforce, and what are the kind of skill sets required to survive?
So this is it's like a delicate and a mother of all debates on AI, because it starts impacting us day to day, all of us actually, because I'd be wrong if I say I'm not worried that tomorrow AI will take, in fact, I want AI to take up, my job at some point and become that agent so that more and more of my job is done by AI and I have to do less and less of my job, and together me and AI become better at our jobs. Look, anytime any new technology comes in, now you look at the evolution of what has happened in technology, right? So go back to the Stone Age, right? Implements got democratized and suddenly like labor was easier. And then you'd have agrarian age, you had the metal age, and all of this was about labor. Then you had the industrial revolution and industrial age, and suddenly skill became democratized and suddenly skill became available, slight bit of skill, right? Then you had the information age, and let's say I combine the computer and the internet age together, which is a little bit of a blasphemy, but let me do that and call it the information age. As you look at it, it started to get knowledge and mental skill kind of getting into intelligence. A calculator was an intelligent device because it was able to do square root of something, sine, cos, stuff like that. So that started getting into like skill democratization at a different level, and information got democratized with the internet. Now with AI, the opportunity and the challenge is that intelligence is getting democratized. And what's happening is with autonomous system is that it is self-healing, it can start making it better. Like a Gemini is using Gemini to write Gemini code. And that is crazy, like that is mind-boggling. But at the same time, I think that we have the ability, when we got cars instead of bullock carts, I think more opportunity came in. When ATM machines came in instead of tellers, more opportunity came in. So I actually am a big believer that more opportunity will come in with AI, more jobs will be created than you've ever seen before. Now you're saying, what am I smoking, right? The challenge is that today we are at a very primitive stage in our civilization, and now you're starting to really think I'm smoking something. Because I'll give you an example, right? We don't have flying cars yet. I want them in Bangalore, actually, especially those of you from Bangalore will recognize that we need, and they'll come to Bangalore first because of my friend's Delta Force theory, I guess. So we don't have flying cars. We don't have a cure for cancer. You know, my near and dear ones are dying of cancer. I'm sure you know somebody dying of cancer right now, right? We don't have, my daughter has some, autoimmune disease. We don't have a solution for that. Right? How do you, there are so many big problems to solve that many of us will go after. Now, we are now only looking at and saying, look, oh, but what happens to the programming that I was doing and that gets democratized? No, but there are so many other areas and ideas that are going to open up. And my hope is that each of us will go after that in the future and say, look, how do we create these ideas? And look, Elon Musk wants man to go to Mars. We are nowhere close to that. In fact, we have not gone back to moon in a while. So and there is not a, people are talking about data centers in space, all of that. Now, if all of these things have to fructify, imagine the number of people who have to get engaged with it and create that. Now, right now you think, hey, this guy is crazy, what is he talking about? But, our limitation as human beings right now is that our output is very restricted. That's why Elon Musk talks about Neuralink or something. So I think as we create and we are able to drive AI better, we are able to attack some of these problems that we think are not possible. And you start attacking them, suddenly, our lives get better, more people have jobs, and I think that future arrives. But the challenge is that we do have to reskill ourselves. If we stay with the same skills, so imagine when the wheel got invented. Everybody was dragging stuff and everybody thought they're out of their jobs. And the wheel got invented and many, many more jobs created. Industrial revolution created more jobs than it took away. Internet created more jobs than it took away. Same thing will happen with AI, but the transition is going to be very uncomfortable.
But here I'd like to interject in a sense I've heard this word reskilling very often. And my typical question is, what do you reskill for? Because moment you start reskilling a person for a particular job, even that is automated. So now suddenly, like say for instance in your own business, you will soon have whether ChatGPT for personal finance or Claude for personal finance, Gemini for personal finance, all these kind of tools. They start competing with everybody. And when you have any one person, say, taking up a job, today is a software engineer, for instance, even those parts, bits and pieces of that particular job profile also are being automated. AI agents are building AI agents today. So a lot of automation is going on in that place also. So how do you see that? What are the kind of things they should keep in mind when you talk about reskilling?
So I'll just take a step back and then come back to this question. So when people ask me, how do you hire? Like, who do you hire? And how do you decide whether you want to hire somebody or not? So I say I have 3 criteria. I have 3+1, so I'll tell you the +1 also, if you're directly reporting to me. The 3 criteria, one is the ability to learn. It's not how much of like tech they know, how much programming. It's like how much ability do they have of learning, and have they shown that ability in the past? Can they show it to me now that they can learn new things? Ability to unlearn. Unlearning is very important because learning, unlearning goes together. If you say aise hi hota hai, this can only be done like this, then you can't learn at all. And number 3 is ownership. When you feel one with the task that you have. So I think in the end, when you talk about skilling, I talk a lot about the ability to learn. As things are happening around you, are you keeping up with the times? Are you continuously learning what is happening? That's number 1. Number 2, in the AI era right now, when you look at it, it is really about understanding the tools around you and continuously staying updated and saying, look, how can I use this tool in a better way? Every time you think all the innovation has happened, somebody comes up with a new thing. Imagine back in the day when zero was not invented. Zero was invented in India. People would never have thought of zero, and suddenly somebody comes up there. When there's nothing, it's called zero. So there is always something around the corner that is waiting to be invented. When we were talking with, I won't take his name, but when we were talking with this AI expert, who's quite an expert, outside, and he said, look, these LLMs are actually very dumb because they don't really have the ability to do real reasoning. And I'm not saying this. I'm saying somebody who's like really, really deep into AI. And so there is a lot to be done there. I think the best way to rescale is to think about what applications can AI be used for, where can it solve problems, what tools can solve what problems, how do you manage them, how do you harness the power of AI continuously. And that is, I think, the best thing, and you continuously learn and stay up on that curve. That will make the biggest difference. In fact, back in the day, I'm going back to when I started working at Cisco Systems in Jan of 2000. In March of 2000, it was the most valued company in the world. It just got that valuation again 25 years from then. So very, very bad crash that happened after that. But if you look at that, right then, the companies that made the most difference, people who made the most difference, figured out how to use internet. And they figured out on top of it, companies like Google, Facebook, all of that. So there is still that AI layer. We figure out how to drive this behemoth, and this is a behemoth that is hard to harness, but we have to sort of put a harness around it and say, look, how do I drive it?
Yeah, I mean, in my own field itself, I think when people ask me, do I use AI for writing? I said, well, AI has been using everything that has been trained on my kind of data, because for over 3 decades, I have been writing. So AI has been trained on my data, so I surely can use some part of it. But having said that, that's the whole nature of the human AI collaboration. It's a tricky arena. I don't think there are any clear answers at this point in time, but it will evolve over a period of time. But I think Ambarish gave some very practical tips. I see some incredibly smart people in the audience. So I'm going to open this up to the audience. If you have a question, no observations, please. I will stop you if there's an observation. I just need very sharp, pointed questions. Kindly identify yourself. This gentleman, please. So if you can identify yourself and the question.
I'm Adarsh Kumar Malhotra. I'm a finance executive, and I've been doing trading and all those things. My pointed question, because my privilege you are here, my question is that when we trade in the market, so people, as set up the people, they know what I am doing as a stop loss and where I'm putting my stop loss. Now a new trend has come where people take out your stop loss and make the movements, and retail investor is stuck up most of the time. So the buys, so more and more data which is getting into the system, and people are able to understand that data. The agents are able to find out where the retail investors are sitting at different stop losses, and ultimately they go for a loss because the fluctuation is such they take them out and then make the swing off that. How you feel that those kind of guardrails can be taken care of?
So there are, I think, two parts to it. One part that you talked about in the question, and the question overall is about the fact that intelligent systems are able to figure out what retail is doing and therefore take advantage of it and make money while the retail makes potentially losses. So one is that I think some of this, in the end, today in the regulatory framework, there are things in place where, certain manipulations, some things, actually are not allowed, and you shouldn't be able to do that. So regulators will, of course, continue to get ahead of that. But the second piece that will happen is that it's a little bit of a race, right? You can put regulations, but then people find some other ways of looking through it. So the biggest thing, I think, is that, in fact, if we are able to bring the retail investors at the same platform, are able to give them the same tools, and that is very much possible now, where it will take time because there is conversation to be had with the regulators, there are compliances to be done. But my hope is that you will start seeing that retail investors have the same kind of tools and they're able to have the same kind of information, and therefore they're able to make same kind of decisions. But overall, long term, at least to retail investors, I say, look, if you're making investments for the long term, these things should have less impact on you. I think when you're trying to do short term, that's when the problem happens. But if you're doing long-term investment, less of a challenge. But I do fully expect that people will have this power very soon. I think one of the sort of a different kind of example there is that back in the day when we were in India, I'll give you a couple examples. When an English movie got released in the US, it was like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I don't know, sometime it won't even come here, but it'll come here later, like a Bruce Lee movies that I used to watch. Now, today, in fact, if you looked at Mission Impossible, it released here first. Now, so that's democratization, right? Same thing is happening in internet technology, other things that they just show up here. My hope is that over a period of time, retail investors will have same kind of tools and the playing field will become more level. And we talked about agentic AI and efficient markets that ends up arriving.
Just one second, I think.
There's a lady in there.
Where?
There's a lady in the middle.
Oh, after that gentleman, then the lady. Yeah, and then here. Yeah. He had put up his hand. He had put up his hand earlier.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello. Sir, I would like to understand your views on how the markets would behave if they become efficient. So one worry that always keeps in the back of my head is, would equity start behaving like bonds, because all the data will already be priced in. So how would the market start performing at that point of time?
Look, I'm not a macroeconomist or sort of predicting markets and stuff like that, but I tell you that actually markets are supposed to be efficient, right? The information has to be, put in there. What ends up happening is some people are like maybe getting, looking at information faster than other people. But why it doesn't create a challenge is that, efficient market cannot predict what a company, see, in the end, your market and prices are reflecting the future cash flows, and of course there are sentiments and all of that. But you can't predict the future cash flows of a company, right? You've just predicted the past and said, so far what has happened. So efficient markets won't behave like bonds, because the future, how companies' cash flows come and how they behave, what their partnerships happen, all of that is still in the future.
It's like AGI a bit. We figured. That lady, please.
If it starts predicting the future, then, then we are talking about time travel and
The
stuff.
lady has put up her hand, so you can give it to her.
Hi, my name is Ketki. I'm the founder and CEO of an enterprise AI startup called Beehive. We work with a lot of large companies, and when we show them AI, the first question they ask is around trust and accuracy. You guys spoke about it too, that LLM eventually is a dumb whatever thing, and it doesn't really, it's a sort of a black box, or that it's sort of presumptuous, it's not definitive. How do you, when you are deploying AI, whether it is internally or even customer facing, because again, finance is not something that people will be okay with a digit here or there. Our sectors are not as intensive. We work in manufacturing, but we get the same questions. So a lot of purchase around AI gets withheld because it's not 100% accurate. I don't know if it'll ever be.
So basically you're talking about how does he implement it with trust and credibility.
And how do you build that trust with people कि ये accurate है?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about that. For example, if you take the sort of chatbot, right, where there are techniques, of course, RAG is very, very popular and old now, 5 years old at least, where you say, look, you know what, I'm going to limit the documents that you're going to look at. Therefore, you can't hallucinate. Right? That's number one. Number two is actually there are ways to take probabilistic system and create results that are somewhat deterministic or reasonably, actually very, very deterministic. See, in the end, nothing is 100% in this world. Like if you go into quantum mechanical world, there are two states at the same time. There is sort of a probability of me being able to like jump on this and go through the floor and all of that. So there are probabilistic systems that can actually be tamed into behaving deterministically for all practical purposes. So that's the other way to think about. Third is, I think, testing. You have to actually test as much as you can and make sure you've tested it in all kinds of scenarios. And within testing, while it's not fully foolproof, but if you can show to your customers that, look, bring me all the data from the past. Now, I can't like still say in the future what will happen. Bring me all the data from the past. I will show you that this is working as behaved. And the last thing I'd say is that you could actually use AI to generate scenarios and throw at this. And say, look, every scenario that this AI is generating that could potentially happen in the future, you create those permutation and combination and show that, again, it's deterministic. That is the most you can do. Like beyond a certain point, you're not going to have 100% is very hard, but you can get to Six Sigma.
Yeah, I mean, we were just discussing even humans hallucinate, please. We are very forgiving when it comes to machines. We aren't as forgiving. I mean, we are very forgiving when it comes to humans. We aren't as forgiving when it comes to machines. One last question, very quick one. The gentleman at the end. Okay.
Hello.
Sorry, I mean.
Hi. Yeah, so I basically had a question where a lot of...
introduce yourself quickly?
Introduce yourself, please.
Oh, okay. I'm Satvik. I'm a student from NMMS. Right. So basically, a lot of information that is being released into the world right now by humans is what is being studied by AI to give outputs for our answers. So at one point, and a lot of these people who are doing all of this testing, for example, we had Stack Overflow, who answered questions by people, etc., which has been taken over by AI right now. So at one point, we'll come to a point where basically these people, like the AI won't have any more human information to get trained on. So what is going to happen then? Like, it is not going to be only in finance or a sector-based question, but like generally.
Yeah. No, I see your question. I think his question really is that there is so much synthetic information being created that AI is getting trained on synthetic information itself, and therefore what happens is like a circular loop. Look, that is a real challenge. Now, I'll just quickly take a step back and talk about what is happening in the world and how are these models trained, right? The way these models are trained is that, and by the way, it's crazy, like, somebody was saying if you could do 1 billion, multiplications and additions a second, it'll take you 100 million years to actually train a model. But they get trained on lots and lots of text and images and all that, they get trained on. And then RHLF happens, right? Which is, there is a human feedback, RLHF, right? Reinforcement learning with human feedback. So you create that human feedback and say, look, this seems right, this seems wrong. But synthetic is a problem. In fact, that is another problem. If you solve that problem, it's $100 billion idea, I kid you not. Google's using synth ID, other things. But if you are able to determine what is synthetic and what is original, you've got a tremendous idea on your hands, because this is becoming a really, really large problem. And I don't have a good answer to you, because this will become a real problem, because as the bots go out there and they train themselves, they will start training on stuff that is generated by AI. That could itself be faulty or challenging to sort of train on. And that's why a lot of researchers are working on being able to identify what is AI and what is synthetic and what is not. The challenge is everybody else in the world is working on creating content that mimics human beings, basically passing the Turing test. So this is a war that is a challenge, and it's a real good question and a real challenge that models will face. And some of you will hopefully come up with a solution on that one, and that'd be great.
Absolutely, and that's what we call AI slop. So that's the term for that.
There you go.
AI is training on AI slop, and then we're going to have a lot of confusion. And then maybe, AI agents will become as confused as us. So we're going to be in for a really happy time. But I can see a lot of smiles in the audience. But actually, if you go back to the one of the founding fathers of AI, Marvin Minsky, I love to quote him. Somebody asked him, if AI becomes sentient, won't you be worried? Or does that not worry you? Because that's what the age-old question. Remember, AI is a 60-year-old technology. So Marvin Minsky just simply told, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, yeah, if AI becomes as intelligent as human beings and gets all our attributes, then remember, it will become as stupid as us also. So no problem out there. So
well, I hope you make it intelligent. I hope you create tremendous amount of applications on top of it.
Absolutely.
And create a ton of value and impact using it.
So thank you. You all have been a very engaging audience, and I would love to thank Ambarish for his time. So please give him a big hand.
Thank you, Leslie. Really appreciate it.